The night air was warm in South Carolina, the kind of evening that made everything feel calm, safe. I was 15, sitting on the porch, watching the stars blink above our little house. Inside, the scent of fresh-baked cookies still lingered in the air from earlier that day. My mom had spent the afternoon baking while my dad played his old guitar, making up silly songs that made us laugh. My big brother, Daniel, was sitting beside me, tossing a baseball up and catching it, his way of passing the time. He was 18, 3 years older than me, and the closest person in my life. He always said it was his job to protect me, to make sure nothing bad ever happened. But life doesn't care about promises. It doesn't care who you love. It just takes. That night, our parents had gone out for dinner. It was supposed to be a normal night. They kissed us goodbye at the door, my mom reminding us not to stay up too late. My dad grinning as he ruffled my hair. "Be good, you two." Then they were gone. Daniel and I watched a movie, laughed at jokes that weren't even that funny, and ate too much popcorn. Hours passed. The clock on the wall ticked past 11, then 12, then 1, and they still weren't home. I started to worry, but Daniel just shrugged. "Maybe they stopped for ice cream or something," he said, though I noticed a slight tension in his voice. I nodded, trying to believe it, but something in my chest felt tight, like a warning I didn't understand yet. Then at 1:34 a.m., there was a knock on the door, a heavy, serious knock, the kind that made my stomach drop before I even stood up. Daniel opened the door. 2 police officers stood there, their faces unreadable. "Are you Daniel and Emily?" one of them asked. I don't remember much after that. I just remember Daniel dropping to his knees, his face pale, his hands shaking. I remember the way my heart pounded, so hard it hurt. I remember feeling like the walls were closing in. Our parents were gone, just like that. A car crash. They never made it home. I sat on the porch for hours after that, staring at the driveway, still expecting them to come walking up. It didn't make sense. Things like this didn't happen to us. My parents were supposed to be invincible. They were the warmth in our house, the steady rhythm of our lives. But now they were just gone. Daniel held me that night as we cried. He whispered, "I got you, Em, no matter what." And I believed him, because he was my big brother, because he was all I had left. Neither of us knew how hard things were about to get. After our parents were gone, everything fell apart. People kept saying, "You poor kids, we're so sorry." But no one could fix it. No one could bring them back. Daniel. And I had to move in with our Aunt Karen, a woman we barely knew. She was nice enough, but it wasn't home. Her house smelled different. Her furniture was stiff and uncomfortable, and she had too many rules. But the worst part was that our parents weren't there. Nothing was warm anymore. Nothing felt safe. Daniel tried to act like everything was okay, like he wasn't breaking inside. He took on the responsibility of an adult overnight. He got a job at a gas station, working late shifts, bringing home what little money he could. He dropped out of school so he could work more, even though he never said it out loud. I knew it was for me. He wanted to make sure I had what I needed, but I could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight on his shoulders. "Daniel, you don't have to do everything," I told him one night as he sat at the kitchen table, counting money from his paycheck. He forced a smile. "I got you, Em, no matter what." But even the strongest people break. One evening, Daniel came home later than usual. His eyes were red, his movements slow. He barely touched his food. "Are you okay?" I asked. "Just tired," he muttered. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to pretend that everything would be okay if we just kept going. But something felt off. Then, one night, he didn't come home. I sat by the window for hours, watching, waiting. I kept telling myself he'd walk through the door any second, but he didn't. Then my phone rang. The voice on the other end was serious. "Is this Emily? There's been an accident." I don't even remember running out of the house. I just remember the hospital, the bright lights, the smell of antiseptic, the beeping machines. And then I saw him, my brother, lying there, his eyes closed, so still. I begged him to wake up. I held his hand, waiting for him to squeeze back, but he didn't. The last thing he ever said to me was, "I'll see you later, But later never came. Now it was just me, just silence, just memories. The days after Daniel was gone felt like walking through a fog. Nothing felt real. Nothing made sense. People kept saying, "I'm so sorry for your loss." But those words meant nothing. Sorry didn't bring Daniel back. Sorry didn't fix the empty space beside me where he used to be. Aunt Karen tried her best. She made me meals, checked on me, gave me space when I didn't want to talk. But it didn't matter, because I was alone, truly alone. I stopped going to school. What was the point? Nothing felt important anymore. My grades slipped. My teachers looked at me with pity, but I ignored them. Friends stopped calling. I stopped caring. I spent hours just sitting in my room, staring at the ceiling, waiting for something to change. But nothing did. One night, I sat by the window, staring at the empty street, the same street I had watched for Daniel that night. My hands clutched the necklace he had given me on my birthday, a simple silver chain with a small star charm. I whispered, "Daniel, what do I do now?" Silence. I closed my eyes and tried to remember his voice, his laugh, the way he always messed up my hair just to annoy me. But even those memories felt distant, like a song playing from another room. Too quiet to hear clearly. Then something happened. A memory surfaced, clear and sharp. Daniel, sitting on his bed with his guitar, strumming softly, singing under his breath. He had always loved music, and he had always said I had a beautiful voice. "You should sing more, he had told me once. "You have something special." I never believed him. My voice was shaky, unsure. But now, his words echoed in my head, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something other than emptiness. That night, I opened Daniel's old guitar case. My fingers trembled as I picked it up. It was heavier than I remembered. The strings were slightly out of tune, but the moment I strummed, the sound filled the silence in my room. I took a deep breath. Then I sang. At first, my voice was weak, barely more than a whisper. But as I kept going, the melody wrapped around me, pulling me in. I closed my eyes, letting the words pour out. It wasn't just a song. It was everything I never got to say, everything I wished Daniel could hear. And for the first time since losing him, I felt like he was listening. I wasn't ready to move on. I wasn't sure I ever would be. But in that moment, I wasn't just a girl lost in grief. I was Emily, and I was singing for my brother. The first time I sang, it was just for myself. Just me, Daniel's guitar, and the silence. But something inside me shifted that night. I started playing more. Slowly, carefully. My hands were untrained, my voice still shaky. But every time I sang, I felt closer to him. Like he was sitting beside me, nodding along to the music, grinning in that way he always did. Then one evening, Aunt Karen knocked on my door. "Emily?" Her voice was soft. "Dinner's ready." I hesitated. I had barely spoken to her in weeks. But tonight, something felt different. I opened the door. She smiled, almost surprised. "I heard you playing. That was beautiful." I looked down, unsure what to say. "You know," she continued, "there's a music night at the community center this weekend. You should go. Play a song." I blinked at her. "Me? No, I can't." She sighed but didn't push. "Think about it." For the next few days, I did think about it. I wasn't sure I could stand in front of people without my voice breaking. But this wasn't for them. This was for Daniel. So, on Saturday night, I walked onto that tiny stage, my heart pounding in my chest. A small crowd sat in the audience. Strangers, local musicians, kids from school. But in that moment, they didn't matter. Only one person did. I took a deep breath, held Daniel's necklace in my palm, and started to play. The first few notes were shaky, my fingers trembling. But then I closed my eyes, and suddenly it was just me and him. I sit by the window, calling your name, but all I hear is the sound of rainy close my eyes, and you're right here laughing, talking like you're still near. I kept going, my voice stronger with each verse. The words weren't just lyrics. They were everything I felt. The room was silent, the kind of silence that holds weight. When I finished the last note, I opened my eyes, expecting nothing. Instead, I saw faces filled with emotion, some smiling softly, others with tears in their eyes. Then the applause came, loud, real, not out of politeness, but because they felt it too. Aunt Karen was in the back, wiping her eyes. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. That night, as I walked home, I whispered to the stars, "Did you hear that, Daniel?" The wind brushed against my cheek, soft as a hand on my shoulder. And I knew he did. I would always miss him. The ache would never fully go away. But now, I had something to hold on to. Music, memories, and the love that never truly fades.